Hello everybody, thank you for being with us for this working group which is entitled A Europe Closer to the Citizens. I'd like to thank Commissioner Elisa Ferreira and the European Commission for organising this 8th Forum on Cohesion, which is an extremely important forum, as you know, for the promotion and the defence of regional policy. For those who don't know me, my name is Yunus Umarji. I'm an MEP, President of the Regional Development Committee in the European Parliament, and I will be the moderator for our session this afternoon. And I'll try to direct the discussions so that our debate is both rich and dynamic. And we'll be here until 6. First of all, I'd like to present our speakers, who are high-quality speakers, and through their experience and commitment to regional policy and their responsibility here will give us extremely interesting answers to the questions we're putting about how we can have a Europe closer to the citizens. And to start with, I'd like to introduce Ivan Bartoš, who is the Deputy Prime Minister of the Czech Republic, and I'd really like to thank him warmly for accepting our invitation. Deputy Prime Minister, you are responsible for digitalisation and regional development. That has been the case since 2021. You're also President of the Pirate Party, as we say it in French. I won't venture to pronounce it in Czech, which and before your ministerial functions, you were in the public administration and regional development in the Chamber of Commerce in the Czech Republic. I'd like to ask you to speak to us for 4 or 5 minutes on cohesion, please.
So thank you very much for invitation. I'd like to also thanks to Commission for organizing this Cohesion Forum. It's an honor for me to actually be here. After those wonderful speeches on the very beginning, it's hard to depict something that wasn't even said, but I'll try. Last or 2 weeks ago, we had an informal meeting of the ministers responsible for cohesion, and I was enthusiastic because we were speaking almost the same language, even we do have national differences of adapting the cohesion politics within the European countries. And then I talked to my staff, hey, that's great. You know, cohesion works, we see it in the Czech Republic. Everybody thinks it's a good tool and it should be preserved for the future, the way it is, and maybe more dynamic and adaptable. And my staff turned back to me and said, that's because we are all here ministers who are responsible for regional development, and it's our main tool that helps us to address the needs of the people in the region, of the partners, of the municipalities, of individuals, as well as the companies and NGOs. So the hard fight of the future won't be among us who cooperate horizontally, but would be to prove that cohesion, by its history, by its stability, is the tool that will help us to solve problems that are current now and will be addressed in the future. The thing I want to depict, and maybe we turn more to that, is, and I'm coming from the time when the information society started, and even before the COVID crisis and Ukrainian crisis done by Putin's invasion, we were always talking more likely on an army side of the problems as a resilience, the way that society adapts and protects itself. Historically, we thought that you build strong structures, something that's stable, massive framework that's untouchable, and it will drive us through the life problems. COVID crisis and current Ukrainian crisis and the refugees coming to Europe showed us that it's on one side, the stable framework and the tools we know how to use and getting the feedback as well. And it was mentioned by Commissioner Ferreira, it's the adaptability, it's an agile approach. And I think one of the most important things that and it's a challenge, not just for today, tomorrow, and upcoming years, is actually to combine those two things. Cohesion structures and instruments that we already know from 10 of the years and brought us to the current level of development, as well to react to rapidly changing things and crises. I would say it's a challenge, but not each crisis is a challenge. And to implement it because any change that's done in the region affects entire society, entire cell, entire community. It could be people coming to stay in that place as refugees. You need schools immediately for kids. You need social system be adaptable to that. You probably will have to extend healthcare system because Czech Republic's got already 300,000 people on the system. All those things that we are addressing through cohesion for individual regions would probably emphasize. So a lot of work that was already done can be endangered because the situation on the energy acceptance changes pretty fast. And for the very end, we should keep our goals, the strategic goals, the national strategies of regional development, green goals, transformation, digital things. But also we have to know that those things are long-term strategic, and we have to be ready right and now, adapt and give an answer to the people of their current needs, which cohesion provides to us. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Ivan Bartosz. The second participant in our panel is the president of the Conference of Peripheral Maritime Regions in Europe, Cees Logan. You are president of the CPMR. That's been the case since 2020, and you're a regional minister for the North Holland region in the Netherlands. You're responsible for accommodation, water management, and nautical sports, as well as regional development. So I'll give you the floor for 4 to 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maers. Dear colleagues, the Cohesion Forum provides each opportunity to address the future of cohesion policy. And some might think to have a discussion on the future is premature, but I believe it's not. We are only 1 year into the new period, but the outlook given in the 8th Cohesion report raises the question with long-term implications. The most critical is whether the present structure of cohesion will be still fit for purpose in a few years. And the answer to this question implies extensive reflection process. But it is not the only reason why we need to look at the future starting from now. Let's face it, there is a big elephant in the forum. It's called the Recovery and Resilience Facility. The idea of making this instrument permanent is openly debated. We also know that the Commission is looking into which aspect could be mainstreamed in other EU programs. One way or the other, the RRF will affect the EU investment policies of tomorrow. And we can't pretend this won't have an impact on cohesion policy. It already does. See, for example, the priority member states have given the drawing up recovery plans over program cohesion funds. As a result, the new programs have been unprecedentedly delayed. So how should we approach this discussion about the future? For a start, I think local and regional authorities need to adopt a different mindset. Taking a defensive stance has worked in the past to fight cuts to policy or alterations to its core structure. But I'm afraid that this strategy no longer is an option. It will not work because the context is very different from the past. The RRF has been a game changer. A major review of economic governance is underway. New priorities such as the green and digital transition has been established and new ones could arise. I think this points to the need of a depth reform of the EU budget including its revenue side and its programs. We should stand ready for this debate, contribute to shaping it, not just reacting to it. This requires thinking outside the traditional lines. If we want to have a say, we need to be bold and innovative. We should not resist a change that will happen anyway. In the contrary, we should embrace it. And this is the only way to ensure that cohesion policy will maintain a central role in the future framework of the EU. It's also the only way to keep the spirit of the cohesion alive, to preserve its core elements, the multiple level governance, the partnership principle, and the territorial dimension. It's not an exaggeration to say that these principles are under threat. Cohesion policy is at risk of centralization more than ever. The programming phase is posing many challenges in this regard. I believe Commissioner Ferreira is well aware of these concerns. It's no accident that the cohesion reports call for reinforcing the participative nature of the cohesion policy. The main question is how this can be done. I think to outline today 3 elements for reflection. First, we are seeing a multiplication of spending programs that have all similar objectives. On the one hand, we have a long established cohesion funds. On the other, we have new programs such as the Just Transition Funds, the Recovery and Resilience Facilities, and the Social Climate Fund. In a way, all have a territorial cohesion approach, but are governed by different provisions. This already translating in more bureaucracy for regions. More bureaucracy means less efficiency. Less efficiency will hurt the impact of investment and the quality of the projects. Moreover, this fragmentation makes it difficult to involve local authorities and develop place-based approaches. What lessons can be drawn for the future? I think we should start exploring the idea of a single investment policy. Yes, a single investment policy. It could at last be the result of a merger of the 3 main cohesion funds, but it could even encompass other funds, such as the Rural Development Fund or the Fishery Fund. And if the RRF is being prolonged, I think we need to reflect on how it could be integrated under cohesion policy. We should not be afraid of putting this proposal on the table. We should not be shy away from having a frank discussion on its pros and cons. Second, we should see the RRF as an opportunity rather than a threat for cohesion policy. More recovery plans have major flaws from our perspective. A poor involvement of local and regional authorities in the governance, an insufficient territorial dimension of planned measures, and a lack of coordination with other EU funds. But the RRF has also become a benchmark in terms of simplification, and we need to make the most of it. Cohesion policy badly needs simpler rules, and I think we should take inspiration from the Recovery Fund to achieve a radical simplification of cohesion funds. Does this mean making them fully performance-based? We will see. My wish is that we launch a debate right now along these lines. And third, there is no doubt that this link between cohesion policy and the European semester will become stronger. We cannot fight this change as we did in the past. We need to acknowledge it and put on the table the correct proposal while securing a formal involvement of the regional authorities. We need to ask ourselves the right questions. Can we reverse the punitive approach of its macroeconomic conditionality? Can we make it rewarding mechanism instead? How can programs be linked to country-specific recommendations in a more effective way? And to conclude, we keep hearing from the European Commission and the European Parliament that local and regional authorities are important partners for the European project. But in the meantime, our knowledge on the ground is too often being ignored. We can organize a conference on the future of Europe every year, but if Europe does not take the region seriously, why should European citizens believe in their opinions and knowledge are taken serious? So please listen to us. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Cees Logan. We also have Magnus Benson with us. You're very welcome. You're President of the Assembly of European Regions. You've been there since 2017. It's a real pleasure to find you here together today, and you're a regional minister for the environment, and you come from Västra Götaland in Sweden. It's the same exercise. You have 4 to 5 minutes to give us your vision of things.
Yes, thank you so much. This 8th edition of the Cohesion Forum has a slogan, and the slogan is Recovery, Rebuild and Reconnect. And there is no other single EU policy that can do so much in helping us to recover from the pandemic and deliver on our ambitions of creating a greener and more inclusive and prosperous Europe, and than the cohesion policy. And the cohesion policy is the most concrete, in my mind, this is the most concrete expression of EU solidarity. And we need EU solidarity. Investments have played a fundamental role in accelerating economic growth and resuming regional economic and social convergence across Europe. And cohesion policy has played an essential role in our response to the COVID-19 crisis and at a crucial point in the in Europe's recovery and transition. Its investments have never been more needed. And on top of all this, we now have the situation in Ukraine with the war started by the Putin regime in Ukraine, which will affect Europe and the world. And we already now can say that we are in a new world order that we need to take to take into account. And that's also to do transition. That's one of the strengths of the cohesion policy. So we need to also use those kind of instruments in this field. I was amazed to hear that there are 300,000 people now fleeing to Czech Republic, and then we know that there are so many others in all over Europe. Of course, this will affect the local and regional level a lot, because that's where people come to, and that's where we also know how to connect with all the stakeholders. So, if we want to deliver Europe closer to the citizens, we must get cohesion policy implemented right now. To get there, we need an even stronger place-based approach, taking cohesion reforms and investment at a local and regional level based on the strength and the challenges of our territories. And it is clear that if we are to make a real difference in the life of those who left behind in these transitions, and effectively tackle the challenges we face in this, in particular the social and economic inequalities, climate change and biodiversity losses, and the demographic change, including migration and depopulation, the subnational context and development plans must be embedded with the national recovery development strategies. And we must do this first by setting up a multi-level governance mechanism involving all levels of government in the design and the delivery of recovery plans and cohesion programs. And secondly, by providing adequate financial and technical support, as well as the right right level of competence for local and regional authorities to drive the development strategies locally. Unfortunately, we observed during this period of crisis that there was an increased trend of centralization. So we hope that we can change it again. But to be clear, centralizing a cohesion policy is not going to work. It will not work for Europe's social and economic and territorial cohesion, nor will it be the road to European to get closer to the citizens. That need to be on the ground, and that's where it's important that we involve the local and regional politicians together with the society. For that's how we bring EU closer to its citizens, because that's where they live. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, cher Magnus.
Thank you, Magnus. We have the pleasure of having with us Luisa Salgueiro, who since 2017 is mayor of Matosinhos in Portugal. You are also the president of the National Association of Portuguese Municipalities. That has been the case since 2021. Thank you very much for being with us, and it's very important for us to have the point of view of Portuguese municipalities, which I think would reflect the view of European municipalities. So I'll give you the floor for 5 minutes as well.
Thank you very much. I'd like to send my greet to all the attendees and to thank particularly to the invitation from Commissioner Elisa Ferreira. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with you, joining this panel, and I said my greetings particularly to my colleagues here at the panel and to all people that stay here with us, particularly Portuguese people that also can join us. Well, first of all, I'd like to underline that all of us understand that we are living challenging times. We just I've been working around the COVID crisis, where the local authorities have a main role to support the populations, and we have to deal with the green and digital transition, and now we have also the war in Ukraine. And that can only be answered with a strong position from the European Union. And the European Union has stepped up with extraordinary measures and delivered the Recovery and Resilience Plan to answer to the COVID crisis. And now we must also have a strong answer to the situation on Ukraine war. And I think that it's very important that in this meeting that we are discussing the cohesion policies, the local authorities have also been invited. We cannot have a global strategy if we don't count on the local level. And as my colleague said, the multi-level answer is the key for our collective success. And what will happen in our future will depend on the decisions that we are taking now. And the European Union has shown the strong position, and I agree and I trust that we'll keep on this way. And as president of the National Association of Portuguese Municipalities, I would argue that there has to be a stronger connection and involvement between local citizens and local power with the European Union institutions. You can see that in a flash Eurobarometer in 2021 with local politicians, 19% agreed that there should be better information on democratic systems and the EU national and subnational level, while 86% agreed with the need to strengthen the involvement of subnational and local government levels in the European Union decision-making. And lastly, 75% think that the European Union should introduce elements of participatory democracy, such as citizens' assemblies and panels. These are key ideas and priorities for the next years. As the spirit of the European Union is built at the transnational level, it is so many times effectively lived and materialized at the local level. Citizens and local politicians must feel their voices are heard, especially in times of rapid changes and multiple crises, such as the days that we are living. I believe that a vibrant European Union and a vibrant national democracy need vibrant local democracies. And our future can only be good for our population if we show everyone that every person count, every man count, every woman count. And that's why I'm happy to stay here to represent all the local levels. Unfortunately, in Portugal, we don't have a regional government. That's a lack in our organization, and that brings us more difficult answers. But I believe that our presence here is also a sign for the future. And we are discussing the European cohesion policies at the same time that there's a war in Europe. And Europe will be much stronger after this crisis. That's why I believe, I trust in European Union institutions, and you can also trust on local authorities. Count on us, we trust in you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much for your contribution. So that brings us into the debate. I'm just recalling what you said. You're really summarizing the European spirit. So the European spirit is really present on a local level. And that's the hope that we have. So now we can open the debate. You all mentioned it. This is a time of crisis. There was the COVID crisis and now the war. So we all have our responsibilities, and we've been caught up in history, and we have to shoulder this responsibility. So you already mentioned this, Mr. Bartos. War is raging through Europe, and that has consequences, quite immediate consequences, in countries which share a physical border with Ukraine, but also in the Czech Republic. The flow of refugees is particularly significant, and we need to have urgent responses. But we also need to bear in mind that the shock of this war will have ripple effects on all our societies and economies in Europe. It will really upend cohesion policy. When it comes to urgent responses, well, I would like to commend the proposal from the European Commission and from Commissioner Ferreira. So this is the CARE proposal. And that means that we can have a response to the problems facing member states and local authorities when it comes to the flow of refugees. We were talking about it yesterday with the Deputy Prime Minister. 80% of refugees are women and children. They have primary needs which need to be met. First of all, they need food, they need education, they also need health care, and in the long term, they'll also need to be integrated into the labour market. The CARE proposal is a first response, and before asking you, Deputy Prime Minister, what you would like to say, I would just like to say to everyone that the European Council, the European Commission, and the European Parliament have agreed in record time, in less than 10 days, in fact, they've agreed on a response together. And this unity and this reaction is historic. And it really meets the challenges that we're facing at the moment. So coming to you, Deputy Prime Minister, I was talking to you yesterday, and you were saying that the Czech Republic has already welcomed 300,000 refugees, and the number is very likely, unfortunately, to increase, especially when we look at how the situation is developing. So I would like to ask you, in your opinion, what should be the European reaction on the whole in the face with the situation in Ukraine? In your point of view, what are the main priorities and the main expectations of member states who are facing this massive influx of refugees from Ukraine?
So thank you for a question. First of all, I'd like to thanks to European Commission and Commissioner Ferreira of that fast reaction of the care package that actually lands on the, let's say, running cohesion programs. But since we are in the period when it's switching from one to another term of the next year planning, states that were successfully in realizing the project within the previous time got actually little money left, and the crisis won't be resolved in weeks, it won't be resolved in months. I hope it won't take years. And we expect people, if the war is over, that they would like to live back in their land in Ukraine. But of course, and it will no doubtly happen, a lot of people would stay in the countries that they escaped from the war. So we need to act fast now, which could be delivered through adjusting some existing things, but we should look forward as well. We put on the place the question of a resilience and recovery plan, which is the money that's prepared, and we address it partially on the transformation on the green, partially on the digital. But the migration crisis is the most current issue and the challenge we face. And it was said by my colleague, we are making decisions now that would have significant effect in many years in the future. Such we were dealing with the Syria crisis, where 4 million of refugees were moving towards Europe, but it was within 3 years. This huge population switch was done in less than 3 weeks. And as I said, those people, they will need the it's not just the housing, but housing is the first question of that. We have to avoid, creating ghettos within Europe, but we were not prepared for such speed. So we probably will, in the first way, a lot of families are taking kids and families to their houses. We are using hotels, we cooperate with the private sector. Would that be enough? I'm afraid it won't. So we should put on the place everybody as we react with restrictions, as we react with the core, with the care package. We should put our heads together and find a fast solution to that issue as well. I think this is very important, and we got to be realistic. It could be a long-term crisis that would affect entire Europe. So thank you for the question. Thank you for Commission for help, and I believe we would put the hands together, because we communicate different ministries, our prime ministers, and trying to find that solution, because the principle of that equity and equality within Europe carried by cohesion is above the individual goals, or let's say those boosters. So don't look at it as a concurring tools, but always find the best tool to solve the current challenge. From my humble opinion, it could be the Recovery and Resilience Facility as one of the fast money source, but it could be discussed in the future.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much for your answer. We're also very grateful to the Czech Republic and to all member states who are shouldering this responsibility to welcome Ukrainian refugees. So this reflects the EU's values founded after the Second World War on solidarity. So this war has really changed things completely, and will continue to be affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Here once again, cohesion policy shows that it is able to react in times of crisis in these very difficult days. Cohesion policy has been able to provide solutions to help out regions in Europe. So there's the CREPLUS regulation. There are also a number of other regulations which you know. My question is for the president of the Conference of Peripheral Maritime Regions. I'd like to know from the CPMR perspective, what would you say about these regulations, REACT EU, for instance, and CREPLUS? Does the CPMR appreciate how these regulations have been connected between state levels, so between the national level and the regional level. What lessons can you learn from this, and what recommendations could you state for us?
Well, thank you very much. And what I said before, and I'm going to say now, is that we need a good involvement of the local and regional authorities. And what we see that in the past there was this good cooperation between in the multi-level approach, and we in the new policy we neglect that. And what we must not forget, if we also look at this crisis now in the Ukraine, what we all condemn, of course, but these refugees are arriving in the local communities, in the regions, and there they find the first aid for them. And that only can be good governance in this multi-level approach. And that's why I once again state that we need this mutual level approach in the cohesion policy, and we must not neglect it.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. So we see that cohesion policy is able to provide responses, especially to major challenges in Europe. And one of the most important transitions that we're going through at the moment is, of course, the energy transition and the climate transition. In regulations that we've negotiated, in particular in the EFTR regulation, we've tried to provide responses which are more ambitious, because we have included the objectives of the Paris Accords in the regulation. The European Commission, like the European Parliament, supported the principles that no European funds, that European funds should be used on cohesion. I know you're very involved in climate, Mr. Berndsen, and I would like to know what European cohesion policies' responses have been to bring about a just transition. I'd like to know how European regions look at this new instrument, and do you think it'll be enough to be able to bring about the transition which is more necessary than ever if we want to become less dependent on the outside, especially on Russia?
Thank you very much for that question. I think I could say for all of us, for 5 years ago, no one would have understood that the electrification in the industry would go so quickly as it has. And it's not something that will happen in the future. It's going on right now. It's not just that cars and trucks are being built with electrical engines. It's the whole factories. It's everything that goes into the products that are now in the transition. Even the steel industry is trying to be fossil free. Everything is going on at the same time. That demands so much energy. And what happened at that time? We have we got this situation where we also need to connect it with security. So of course that need for even a faster transition is not easy, because it is when you change in your energy supply chains, you usually think in decades, but now we will need to think much quicker, and we must work much closer to each other. And of course, this is the instrument of cohesion, or the way of working with that we have done with cohesion that's the model that we need to use in this process as well. But it's also, if it will be successful, it is also necessary that we explain how the new facility works for all the also on the ground. So I think organizations like mine, Assembly of European Regions and others, and together with the Commission and the Parliament, etc., we need to help also explain how these instruments are supposed to work, and again make sure that we include all the levels of governments to do this. But it's needed to do directly, and there is a risk that we always are in these kind of meetings where we are sitting and preaching to the choir because we think the same here. But we also need to tell this story in the other meetings where we don't preach to the choir and give the good examples when transition have led to something better in the future. It will be hard in the movement because there is a lot of people that need to be re-educated. Also people that are very well educated. If you have been working with the combustion engine, there are 700 parts in one of them. And in electrical engine, it's only 70, but it's the completely different things. So you need also, if you are a civil servant working in the field, you will need new education. So, of course, it can be the instruments can really make a difference. But if it should be like that, we need to work together with all levels of government, but also together with the industry, the business side, with academia and civil society. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. So we're going to continue talking about the challenges facing regions and municipalities. Another challenge is the way that local authorities and regions face up to extreme climate events. These are getting more and more common everywhere. We've noticed that these extreme weather events are becoming more and more challenging, and they're going hand in hand with climate change. Portugal is, of course, concerned by these weather catastrophes, climate catastrophes, especially by drought, which has considerable consequences on cohesion. So the question that I'd like to ask you, what are the tools at the local authorities' disposal to be able to adapt to climate change? So we've just spoken about mitigation, about reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but adaptation is also very important. I would like to know how local authorities are managing and if they need additional support or strategies, European strategies, for example, to be able to face up to this challenge.
I think that we are very involved with all the municipalities in a general way, very involved in the answer on climate change. We are following the Paris Agreement. I can only speak about Portuguese situation, and most of the municipalities have already been working in a strategy in order to combat the climate changes. And it is, of course, a problem of financing, but also a strategy. And we are facing even the energetic problems. I must talk about my particular situation. In my municipality, we have an oil refinery that has closed about 1 year ago. It was a very unpredictable decision of the closing of the refinery, and we are using directly the money of the Just Transition Fund in order to find another solutions, because it had an impact on about 220 million euros in the local economy, so you can understand how much that meant. But the first challenge is to make all the population aware of the changing that we must have in our behaviors. We must change the way that we organize our life. And right now we are having a water crisis because we have no water. There hasn't been raining last month in Portugal, and everyone has to understand that we must change all our lifestyle, what we do in our home, the way we cook, the way we take care of the gardeners. So of course that we always need the European Union support and the money for the projects and the programs. But the first goal to achieve, I believe, is that you can involve all the population. And that's the key for the role of the local authorities, because we stay very close to the people. We can work together even in the previous policies with the children, with the schools, and that's the only way to get to the right point, I believe. So, of course, once again, we need to work in a multi-level answers. The local authorities to have the diagnostic of the situations, the regional commissions to help us to have the best solutions in order to use the 2030 money solutions also for these local strategies. But that's not the most difficult answer that we have to find. The most important is to change the way that people look how to use, for instance, the public transport. If you can make every student to use the public transport. Now with the COVID, it's another difficulty because people are afraid to use a public transport. Everyone wants to use his own car, so it's even more difficult now. And if we look locally and you act nationally or at European level, it would be easier. So once again, it is very important that we have the global means, but it is also very relevant that we understand direct of the situation. But in a general way, I think that the local authorities, the municipalities in Portugal are already been doing the right way in order to achieve the global goals.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Yes, I would like to get a reaction from the Deputy Prime Minister, from Mr. Bartos. I'd like to know about adaptation to climate change. Last summer in Germany, there were natural catastrophes. There was the damage of 35 billion euros, 5 billion in Belgium. We are building infrastructure through European funds, and then we rebuild them later on with European funds. So does he share the opinion that through cohesion policy, it'd be better to have some sort of preventative approach in our approach to infrastructure?
I believe yes, it has preventive effects. We in Czech Republic were used to historically missing water, and through dry land we've got floods, and last year we had a tornado for the first time that actually damaged a lot of villages and households in eastern Moravia, which wasn't historically the first but the strongest one that happened on our land. So obviously things are changing. I have to say, and I'm from the small city of the north, that the local authorities actually are much capable to explain the necessity of going fossil-free, more green, environmentally responsible behavior, because you can touch it. It's hard to explain to a person in the region of a global warming issue, but you can easily show him that there are 2 more degrees within the city during the summer. You know, when you've got a chimney next to your house, or if you are living next to the highway, which in future we still probably will have traffic jams, but at least those cars will be electric and won't smoke and make a noise. So the role of local governments and the leaders and the participants are very important. When I'm missing a little bit the role that we could have, and I believe even French presidency and our presidency would somehow bring that aspect closer to the people, is actually to explain how that happens. And you can only explain it through the things that people know. You wake up in the morning, you have a glass of water, it's cleaned by the facility that's most likely supported from cohesion funds of European Union. And then you take a bus, right? If it's a combined or electric bus, we are not that far yet, but most likely that part of public transportation is somehow co-financed by the European funds. And those are the things that people can touch. Historically, especially our part of Europe, politics want to get the goals for things that they did not really achieve by themselves. So another thing, let's give European Union credit in front of the people, so they know that change is brought from the top level thinking and financing to the very local acting and delivering better life, better environment to the people, easier work. And people are scared of changes. And you can do this very simple thing. Support something that's harmful and good, and tax things that are bad to regulate them. But we do unique approach. We finance the transition from, you know, the things that are harmful to us, to society, they are old, costly, whatever, to move to the things that they would be supported or would work in almost independently and provide better life in the future. So let's say this is a unique approach to the problem, because the simple way would be just tax the bad things and, you know, co-finance or support the good things. But we are focused on the transition, and I think that is important, and we got to be able to explain it to the people. And again, local politicians usually are more successful to showing the particular delivery more than politicians on the stage talking about things that you cannot really touch, which is a global warming or global energy crisis or raising level of the seas. So credit to the local politicians from me.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Questions are coming in online because citizens are following our debate. The president of the CPMR is still with us, and I'll put the question to him about how we can adapt to climate change, especially when we're in maritime island regions of Europe, because they're the areas most affected by climate change, which is taking place. Does he share the opinion of the Regional Development Committee that additional resources need to be given to regions so as to adapt?
Yes, thank you very much for the question, and I think that's a valid point what is in the question, and because we have to look at the regional handicaps in climate change and the knowledge on the ground there, and I think one of the main principles what we should do is not be afraid to share our knowledge. This is one thing what we do within the CPMR members. But we should do that also on a global scale, because if we don't take into account the geographical handicaps, for example, our outermost regions, the islands, they are isolated. They have a direct effect by sea level rise. So we need to plan ahead. I believe it was Plato who said, "He who desires peace must prepare for war." And that is exactly what we have to do on climate change as well. We know that it is coming, and we must prepare, with everything we've got, but also taken into account that we are geographically not equal. It's not everywhere the same. For instance, the coast of Portugal is completely different than the coast of Holland. And we need to take this sort of local and geographical differences into account. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Your reply leads us on to the question of the territorial dimension of cohesion policy, because we all know there's great diversity between regions in Europe, and one of the missions of the cohesion policy is to deal with this diversity, although it has unity in its policies. So I'd like to turn to the Deputy Prime Minister, and ask you, how do you think that this territorial dimension can be assumed by cohesion policy, especially taking account of the rural areas and the sparsely populated areas? We're facing very new challenges with the depopulation of many rural areas, and I'd like to underline that the European Commission has started work on rural areas with the European Parliament. We're working on this file as well. So we'd like to hear what you have to say from the Czech point of view on this question.
So I will react fast, and I'm happy because, okay, you described on the very beginning my, let's say, political history, but my education went through information science and through ontologies, the way how to describe the real life in the data with them parameters. And I, even though as a member of opposition during the previous election period, one thing I said was really good prepared, and this was the regional development strategy provided by the previous government for 2021 plus, which implemented those territorial dimensions into that. And the way me as a data analyst as well, the way it was almost the business intelligence like three-dimensional cubes that are describing different size of the areas by their specific, and making not regional border specific areas, but depicting the specificity and the problems of such area. Because it could be in well-development region for particular, for example, bad infrastructure and accessibility through the roads. You can have a spot that requires completely different approach within the strategy over all regions. So that's the first thing. We do implement that approach to the very objectives for the specific kind of, and you would see we've got different names for the areas. And as well, there are tools that are provided and very well implemented in the Czech Republic. It is for sure ITI, which was highly used by the big cities regarding the specific programs of the agglomerations around the cities and small villages. We've got a little issue. We've got around the Prague about 400 villages, so you cannot use it for each the project that ATI could deliver. But it's also the community-led local development, which we've got implemented as a part of cohesion on for the 2020 out to 2023, almost 93% of the territory of the Czech Republic. So we've got legislation, we've got cohesion funds, we've got tools and methodology how to apply them, and thanks to whoever brought it to us on the break of the century, we do have a IT and digital skilled people who can combine the data and depict its specific targeting on the area. And you cannot do that from the computer of the office. So again, the local teams and local delivery units are very important to actually prove that upside theory and strategy that meet the objectives, and it does its purpose in the region. So from my point of view and the Czech Republic, in that specific aspect of the cohesion politics, we are doing great, and I hope it's appreciated by our partners in the European Commission and European Union.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. You're right. The territorial dimension is not an option when it comes to cohesion policy. It's an obligation. We have Article 174 showing this, and I'd like to turn to the President of the CPMR, first of all, and then the regions of Europe. Does the President of the CPMR think that Article 174 is used in the way it should be, as much as it should be, when it comes to island regions?
Well, I think that it's good that we have this article which involve this outermost regions and the island regions, and I think that it's good it's there. If it is used always on the proper manner, well, we can have a debate on that, because what we see is that we are not always asked for our input on execution of what comes out of this. So that's I think that we could do better in using this article. That's my first reaction on this question. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I'd like to put the question to you as well.
Continue there. Of course, it's super important with the participation of all level of government, but let me go a little bit back on what mentioned also a little bit before about rural strategies. And I think we have had a history of a lot of rural strategies and urban strategies, and we have good examples of good things happening in the major cities. We have good things happening in small municipalities. Not always possible to multiply. What we need to do much more is to connect the two, because the rural area will always need the urban centers, but that's also the other way around. And I think that will be even more important now after all the lessons that we have learned after the COVID crisis, with the opportunities for having a lot more services. Not okay.
Bien, il y a une sirène qui s'est déclenchée. Je ne crois pas que ce soit des bombardements qui arrivent sur Bruxelles.
Is it end of discussion announcement?
Mais peut-être peut-on me dire si... Je crois qu'il est difficile de continuer, puisqu'on risque de ne plus nous entendre. Mais si...
But we're ready to take shelter if necessary.
Oui. Bien. Oh, thank you. So hopefully we are doing the right thing to stay here. We'll see. Yes. So my point was that we need to find the strategies that interlink these strategies, urban and rural, that we have done before. And again, it's hard to predict anything, especially the future, as someone said. And of course, we have learned more, so many times the last couple of years that there will always happen things that we need to be more agile, we be much more flexible, so that we need to keep that in our mind. I would never thought just a month ago that in my home we would have a teenager from Ukraine living because he had to flee from the war in Kharkiv. I mean, that would not be in my mind. And right now there are a lot of, or I should say, all European, more or less all European cities and regions are preparing for what they can do in this situation. And for the cities and the regions, it will be very important to continue of being this, being, as I said, agile and flexible. But it will not work without the cooperation with the European level and with the national level. It won't work otherwise. Thank you. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I think you're quite right. Commissioner Ferreira said to the Parliament yesterday that we shouldn't think about competition between rural regions and urban strategies that we're implementing. That's precisely the trap we shouldn't fall into. But I'd like to turn now to the representative of the Portuguese municipalities to ask you what you think about integrating towns into this governance strategy in cohesion policy. It's multi-level governance as well that we're very attached to here.
Well, I believe that local authorities are partners of that national and European goals, general goals. But we can only have success if we get the commitment of our populations also. And there are some good examples that we can use, because living labs, for instance, are a great example of adoption new ways of life instead of impositions. And we have to embrace each person in our policies. And I'd like to use an example. I think it's a good example. That is the new European Bauhaus that is linked to the European Green Deal. And it's a great example of closing the gap between people and politicians and the European and local levels. And it presents an interdisciplinary way, a platform that can combine the sustainability, the aesthetic, and the inclusion issues. And we are all working on that, all countries, but also the cities, the municipalities. And I believe that if you use that kind of projects, it's easier to involve people to get our population's commitment, so we'll have more chances to have good results. And I will also like, if you allowed me to use an example, because we have already received the prizes, and one of the issues of the new European Bauhaus, it was won by the Center of Engineering and Product Development in my own town, Matosinhos. And these kind of projects that we use locally are a great help in order to make us go faster. So the involvement of the municipalities and the regional authorities, when it's the case that you can also have the regional level, will increase the possibilities of having the best results.
Let's stay with issues of governance and good partnership. Well, in the European Parliament, we're very attached to the best possible partnerships with towns and regions of Europe, we have the national relaunch and recovery funds, and I'd like to turn to the Deputy Prime Minister of the Czech Republic to see whether we are managing to use the different instruments well, if there's consistency there, and if there's the same need to have good partnerships with the local towns and municipalities when it comes to this recovery.
As I said, we are trying to implement the instruments that allow, and it's one of the principles that I actually believe the modern politics should be based on, that support subsidiarity level, that you build up things from the bottom to the top, not vice versa. And we also, and it's popular, and a lot of newly elected municipality politicians are jumping right into that on the regional level and the city level. So we do also have conferences that on global level describes the new politics. So we are trying to have information flowing through different level of the governance of the programs, and as well using technology that you get from the global strategies to the regional strategies to actually action plans. And we've got a repository from the individual city and municipal strategies. Then our goal in the future maybe would be pretty easy, just mapping the needs and the strategies that are following common goals to the specific way of financial or let's say governance resource. So we are trying to implement the tools that are modern, that actually involves the specific level of the governance in the specific part of the projects. And it's often discussed even in the industry and the business sector that you are reaching for the customer feedback, right? But it's not the star on the screen of the cell phone. The citizen is the customer. So basically, the better we perform from the political point of view, then your chance to be elected for that good performance is, as well as the well-being of the people, is that biggest feedback that you can get. So yep, we should work not on a centric base, having different levels involved, and then it could work. Sometimes it's hard, and we have to work on that for sure. It's actually past this dynamically or sometimes very hard agreement on the level of European nations on a specific program, because the cities are ready to actually implement and start them projects, and the closer you get to the moment, they need the specifics for the projects to maybe know it's worth of going for it, or if they still got the time to adjust. So if we have to work on something, that's probably European level and a national level of passing the decision directly to the national government. And then, as far as I can say in Czech Republic, we do have the governance set up to the level of the city, which actually delivers the concrete project that should improve the citizen life.
Merci.
Thank you. Louisa Salguero was saying at the beginning of this discussion that she was very attached to participatory democracy, and I think that we can make progress there so that there's more of this when we define European programs for the different regions and areas. So there's a new zone that we can invest in, or the managers of investment funds, that is, whether they are at national or regional ones. If we want to be complete here, we can't fail to talk about the conclusions of the 8th Cohesion report. There were, of course, a lot of questions put there, but what we do observe is that the report says that there are still important differences in development despite the success of regional policy, and there are lots of successes, but we need to continue our work on discrepancies between territories. The level of unemployment remains high in southern countries in particular, and in outlying areas and on the islands. And we also see, as we read the 8th report, that there is quite a clear link between the move away of industry, the decline of industry, and unemployment levels. So my question to President Benson, how can Europe remedy this? Perhaps the cohesion objectives should be better covered or understood in other union policies, because cohesion policy isn't just a matter for regional policy. It is something that's important for all policies. And that's why we are making these statements that we are making.
Yes, thank you very much. And a little secret for the audience: we are both islanders, so we know the situation of living on an island. But even though I'm living in the city right now, but of course the eighth cohesion report showed a lot of things that we need to take into our hands and use, because you can have a lot of differences within a country, even though we see the progress as going the right way. We have a general progress, and we see a lot of good examples, but we will need to be very careful and also see that it's that could be even accelerated differences in a country if we don't do this in the right way. But on the other hand, we also see that the instrument is very much an instrument that could be used for these kind of convergence. So again, that's why a general, just a general strategy for a whole country is not valid. That's why we need to go down to the ground and build it from the bottom up. And I think that the report shows that, and we should really use that. And we also can see on the local ground the changes in the local and regional business side, and be very work very close together with them in this transition, which is needed also to get things to work. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. We just have 5 minutes left for our discussion, so I'll give the floor to everybody again, so that you can conclude this discussion, which I think was quite lively, rich, exciting, and I do hope that it has explained things for people listening to us. I'll give the floor to Deputy Prime Minister Bartos for 1 minute.
You quite surprised me, you picked me first. But what I want to depict, and it's based on what was said here by my colleagues, we've got common goals. We deliver them through the strategies, and we've got cohesion politics as a principle and as a 1/3 of a budget of the EU that is used to support the region and cohesion and sustainable development. And there are certain moments when we need specific booster, the COVID, the war, whatever crisis, energetic crisis, and we should use them. But be aware, and do not think of them as a solution of individual boosters coming in the fast way with massive changes. Because then the impact, which is delivered rapidly, hopefully rapidly in specific cases, could also endanger the cohesion politics and make the differences between regions even bigger. Because you placed, for example, a specific industry through segment-oriented program for the automotive, which sucks all employees from companies that you were supported for years, SMEs and small businesses. You were supporting them for years, but then you provide very specific, good paid jobs in the region, and it would just destroy the structure for this fast gain. We need to raise salary of the people in the region. Think of well-being, which is combination of very specific things as education, good healthcare system, environment, culture, which is covered by those complex deliveries of cohesion funds. So think smart, look to the future, be agile. That's my message.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I'll give the floor to the...
Conclusion en 1 minute.
Thank you very much. I'd like to state again that territories aren't the same, and we need to have tailor-made measures. And multi-level governance means using all levels of government and all social economic partners towards common goals. This is a fundamental principle for successful investment. Hence, cohesion policy is the only effective investment policy, as I said in my opening statement. And I like to close down with, especially on climate change, the biggest challenges are still coming for us, are still waiting for us in the future. So let us not forget that. Which policy we invent, which in place, our biggest challenges are still ahead of us, and we need it battled on a multi-governance level approach. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. President Berndsen, closing remark?
As local and regional politicians that lives in the territory, live very close to the citizens, I know that everyone has the purpose of creating a good life, or creating a good possibilities for a good life for the citizens, and that's very close to what you say about well-being, and that's the purpose, of course. And the cohesion policy has been very important for lifting the poorer areas, but sometimes people think that is a zero-sum that will need to make the richer poorer, but that's not the fact. We can be richer together, because when more people have the possibility to buy more of the goods that are produced perhaps in the richer areas, that's so clearly a win-win situation. And I think we need to be better in selling the whole idea of the cohesion policy. And I think too long time it has been just discussed as something that European money that goes to the regions, instead of showing the results. I think we need to brag a little bit more about our good examples, and not only the good examples, but the whole cohesion policy, because it is, as I said in the beginning, it's European solidarity. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Luisa Salgueiro.
Very shortly, just to say that when we are talking about cohesion, we are talking about all kinds of policies. We are talking about health services or care services, environmental policies, cultural, urbanistic, digital services. Everything is cohesion. And at the end, we are working for companies, institutions, families, persons. And the reason why we are all here is to make people happier. And if everyone gets happier, that's that means that the cohesion and our work is in the right way. So that's in few words, what I think it's the reason why every day we wake up and go to work.
Eh bien, je crois que c'est la...
Well, I think that's the nicest way we could possibly conclude this. Cohesion policy, through its very objectives, is close to citizens. So we are going to conclude, as we started, with a thought going out, a thought of solidarity for the Ukrainian people and for all of those in Europe who are shouldering the responsibility of hosting these refugees. I would once again like to commend the institution, the European Commission, first of all, the European Council and the European Parliament. Next week there'll be a mini plenary of the Parliament about the care initiatives. So caring, looking after people, contributing to through cohesion policy to helping out Ukrainians. Thank you very much for this discussion, and I hope to see you all very soon to be able to continue to work to defend, to promote cohesion policy. Thank you very much.